Story 1. The House That Watches. The baby monitor crackled to life in the dead of night, and a voice that wasn't my daughter's whispered, "I see you." I bolted upright in bed, the room heavy with unnatural silence. My wife stirred beside me asking what was wrong, but I couldn't form the words. The faint glow from the monitor screen illuminated the nursery, showing an empty crib. But the voice came again, soft and guttural, "Right behind you." I whipped around, heart pounding so hard it hurt, but nothing was there. The house was old, prone to settling, but no creak had ever sounded quite like a footstep. I grabbed the flashlight from the nightstand, its beam cutting sharp lines through the shadows. My wife clutched my arm, trembling, begging me not to go. But I had to. My daughter's crib was empty. The hallway stretched endlessly, every door seeming unfamiliar and wrong. I passed by the old mirror, catching a glimpse of a figure too tall to be mine. Spinning around, I found only darkness. I tried to call out for my daughter, but my voice cracked under the weight of terror. Something responded, a low, wet chuckle echoing through the walls. A cold draft slid past me, smelling of rotten earth. The nursery door stood ajar, moving slightly as though pushed from within. Light flickered from the nightlight shaped like a little lamb. I pushed the door open, the hinges groaning like a wounded animal. Inside, the crib was overturned, stuffed animals strewn like discarded corpses. The walls were covered in crude, childlike drawings in what I prayed was red paint. One drawing showed our family, with a tall, faceless figure looming over us. Another depicted a small girl being dragged into a hole in the floor. I dropped to my knees, frantically searching for signs of my daughter. A tiny, trembling voice whimpered from the closet. "I'm scared, Daddy," it said. Relief surged through me and I rushed to the closet door. But as I reached for the handle, the voice changed. "I'm not your daughter anymore." The handle turned on its own, the door creaking open inch by agonizing inch. Inside was only blackness, too deep and thick for the small space. Two eyes, glinting like dying stars, blinked open within the void. Something long and skeletal began to crawl out, fingers scraping against wood. I slammed the door shut, holding it as something pounded from the other side. The walls began to bleed a dark, viscous liquid that smelled of decay. My wife screamed from down the hall, her voice abruptly cut off. I tore out of the room, the flashlight flickering with every step. In the master bedroom, the bed was empty, the sheets soaked in something dark. The window was open, curtains billowing like pale, grasping hands. A figure stood outside on the lawn, cradling something small in its arms. It was too dark to see a face, but it rocked the bundle gently. I yelled, racing down the stairs, nearly slipping on the slick, wet floor. Every painting on the wall now showed that faceless figure, eyes painted over with black smears. The air felt heavier with each step, as if the house itself didn't want me to leave. The front door wouldn't budge no matter how I pulled and twisted the knob. Behind me, footsteps began descending the staircase. I turned, ready to fight, but no one was there. The crying of a baby came from the living room now. I followed it, heart in my throat, to find the old baby monitor resting on the coffee table. It displayed a video feed of a deep earthen tunnel. And from the tunnel came the unmistakable sound of my wife's voice, begging for help. I screamed her name, but my voice was swallowed by a sudden, oppressive silence. The fireplace ignited on its own, flames forming the shape of a hand. Books fell from the shelves, pages flapping like wings of dying birds. I could hear something breathing beneath the floorboards. The air shifted and a tall, thin figure stepped out of the shadows. It wore my father's face, though he'd been dead for years. "I warned you not to stay here," it said in a voice like cracking bones. I backed away, slamming into the wall, eyes darting for a weapon. The figure dropped what it was carrying, a bundle of old, rotting cloth. Inside was a single human tooth, stained yellow and black. The lights flickered violently, then went out, plunging me into blackness. The floor opened beneath me like a yawning mouth. I fell, tumbling through cold, wet earth that clung to my skin. When I landed, I was in a vast cavern lined with thousands of empty cribs. From each crib came a baby's soft, hungry wail. Something cold and many-legged brushed against my face. A voice, terrible and ancient, whispered from the darkness, "Welcome home, child." Shapes began to emerge. Too many arms, too many teeth. I ran blindly, tripping over small, unidentifiable shapes on the ground. The cries of infants rose into a single, deafening chorus. A pale, eyeless woman reached out for me, her mouth a black pit. I turned and scrambled toward a faint light in the distance. My legs ached, lungs burning, but I didn't stop. The light was a door standing alone in the void. I threw it open, bursting back into my own hallway. But everything was wrong. The colors were off and the walls pulsed like skin. Portraits of my family hung there, all eyes gouged out. From behind, cold hands grabbed me, pulling me back into the dark. I kicked and screamed, but the hallway stretched away endlessly. The last thing I saw was my reflection in the mirror, smiling though I wasn't. And then the voice came again from inside my own head. "Now you belong to us." I woke in my bed, daylight streaming through the window. But the baby monitor still crackled with static. And from the nursery came my daughter's voice, cheerful and sweet. "I missed you, Daddy. We had so much fun last night." Story 2. Closer this time. The photograph on my phone showed me asleep in my bed, taken at 3:13 a.m. while I lived alone. I stared at the image, my stomach twisting into knots. I didn't remember taking it and no one else had a key. The timestamp was from just hours ago. I checked every lock, window and closet, finding nothing out of place. Paranoia settled on me like a second skin. I tried convincing myself it was a glitch, but the photo was too clear. My sleeping face was peaceful, unaware. The room was dimly lit by the nightlight I always left on. In the corner of the photo, a shadow leaned over me. I didn't recognize the shape, but it was tall, thin and wrong. I deleted the picture, or tried to. It reappeared in my gallery 30 seconds later. Now the shadow was closer. I dropped my phone, pulse hammering in my ears. The house creaked in the oppressive quiet. I considered calling the police but feared they'd think me unstable. Instead, I barricaded the bedroom door. Sleep was out of the question. I kept the light on, a makeshift weapon by my side. Every sound amplified in the silence. A scrape beneath the bed made my blood turn to ice. I knelt down, dread squeezing my chest. Empty, or so it seemed. I lay back, keeping my eyes open until exhaustion overtook me. When I woke, the door was ajar. The nightlight was unplugged, lying on the floor. On the ceiling above me, a word was scrawled in something dark. "Soon." I fled to the living room, the air heavy and cold. Every picture frame faced the wall. My phone buzzed with a new message. "You shouldn't have looked." No number, no contact. I smashed the phone glass, cutting my hand. The house felt smaller somehow, pressing in. A faint knocking came from the attic hatch. I hadn't opened it in years. The knocking grew louder, more frantic. My trembling hands gripped a flashlight. I climbed the ladder, heart pounding with every step. The hatch creaked open, revealing only darkness. I shone the light inside and screamed. A figure stood there, smiling with too many teeth. It didn't blink, didn't move. I scrambled down, dropping the flashlight. It followed. Slow, deliberate, never rushing. I bolted out the front door into the night. The street was empty, silent, wrong. No wind, no cars, no sounds of life. Every house had its windows covered, blinds drawn. I pounded on my neighbor's door, no answer. The figure appeared at the end of the street. Its limbs too long, its face a shifting blur. I ran, not caring where. Every street led back to my house. No matter how far I ran. The same cracked sidewalk, the same flickering street lamp. Back to the same front steps. The front door was wide open. A voice called from inside, my own voice. "Come home." I turned away, refusing to go in. But the street stretched endlessly behind me. I stepped backward, eyes on the house. Something cold wrapped around my wrist. I looked down, a pale, withered hand. I screamed as it pulled. The house swallowed me whole. The door slammed shut, the world outside vanished. Darkness pressed in, thick and suffocating. I opened my eyes, back in bed. The night light glowed softly. My phone buzzed beside me. A new photo. I opened it with shaking fingers. It showed me asleep in bed. And the shadow leaning over me. Closer this time. Story 3. The Man in A22. I moved into apartment B22 because it was cheap and came with a locked door across the hall. A22, that no one ever seemed to open. The landlord said it was just used for storage and hadn't been touched in years. On my second night, I heard someone knock from inside it. 3 short taps. I laughed it off as old pipes, but the sound came again the next night, louder. The third night, I put my ear to the door and heard someone whisper my name. I hadn't told anyone I'd moved in yet. I asked the landlord again, but he just muttered something about bad wiring and walked away. The door stayed locked, old-fashioned, with a keyhole big enough to peek through. I told myself not to look, but on the 5th night I did. What I saw didn't make sense. The room was pitch black except for a single armchair facing the door. Someone was sitting in it, but their face was completely covered in shadow. They didn't move, didn't blink. I backed away quickly and pretended I hadn't seen anything. The next morning, my front door was ajar. Nothing was stolen, but the smell of dust and mold clung to my hallway. On the kitchen table sat a cup of tea, still warm. I hadn't made tea. I hadn't bought any. I called my sister and asked if I could stay the weekend. She said yes, but when I arrived, her dog wouldn't stop growling at me. That night, I dreamt of the man in the chair. Except he wasn't sitting anymore, he was standing right behind me, breathing. I woke up with bruises on my shoulders in the shape of fingers. I moved back into B22 because I didn't know what else to do. I shoved a chair under the doorknob at night just in case. It didn't help. The knocks started again. This time they were on my bedroom wall. I knocked back once. He responded twice. I told myself it was just a prank. But the air smelled like old wood and damp leather, just like A22. One night I woke up to my bed being moved. It slid across the floor inch by inch toward the wall we shared. I screamed and it stopped. The silence afterward was worse. It felt expectant. I stopped sleeping. I started recording everything. The camera never caught anything directly, just flickers of static and warping shadows. But every night the man in the chair was closer. I could feel it. I finally demanded the key to A22. The landlord refused, looked terrified, and said, "That room doesn't open." I broke the lock. The door opened easily. The smell hit me like a wave, wet earth, rotting fabric, and something else, sour. The room was empty. No chair. No man. Just dust. And dozens of small framed photos on the walls. They were all pictures of me. Some from years ago, some from yesterday. Some from angles inside my own apartment. I staggered back and slammed the door shut. It locked itself again. I tried to leave the building, but the elevator wouldn't come. The stairs ended at a brick wall. My phone showed no signal. My calls never went through. Outside the windows, the world was gray and motionless. I screamed until my voice broke. No one heard. At midnight, the lights went out. The only light came from beneath A22. Someone was pacing behind the door. I turned every lock I had. Pushed every piece of furniture against my front door. It didn't matter. I blinked and suddenly I was standing inside A22. In the chair. I tried to move, but my limbs were stone. My mouth was sealed shut. And in front of me stood someone looking through the keyhole. It was me. They looked scared. Then they walked away. Days passed. I didn't get hungry. I didn't get tired. I just sat. Sometimes I hear people outside, new tenants. I try to scream, but no sound comes out. The door never opens again. Until one day I see a new face peeking through the keyhole. She looks curious. She looks like I did. I want to warn her. I want to tell her to run. But I just sit. Watching. Waiting. Wondering how long it will be until she's in the chair too. Because I know what happens next. It always ends the same. There's always someone in A22, and now it's her turn. Story 4. The House That Watches. I woke up to find a note on my nightstand that read, "Don't open your eyes." My heart hammered in my chest. The room felt unnaturally cold. I could hear breathing that wasn't mine. I didn't remember falling asleep. The last thing I recalled was locking the front door. A faint creak came from the corner of my room. I squeezed my eyes tighter. The breathing grew closer. I reached for my phone but felt nothing. My nightstand was bare except for the note. A whisper touched my ear saying, "I see you." I held my breath. My pulse roared in my ears. I wanted to scream. The floorboards moaned under invisible weight. I counted to 10, willing myself awake. A clammy hand brushed my ankle. I jerked my leg away. The breathing turned into raspy laughter. Shadows shifted behind my eyelids. I sensed someone crouching beside me. "Open them," it hissed. The note crumpled in my sweating hand. I fought every instinct to look. My limbs felt paralyzed. Something sharp traced my cheek. I felt its cold breath again. "You brought me back," it said. The air smelled of earth and rot. I forced my mouth to move. "What do you want?" I whispered. The laughter stopped abruptly. Home, it murmured. I remembered the old house. The one we tore down last fall. The one everyone warned was cursed. My friends dared me to take something. I stole a dusty mirror. I hung it in my room. Strange things started happening. Lights flickered for no reason. Objects moved on their own. Whispers echoed in empty hallways. And now this. A brittle voice spoke again. I followed the glass. I felt the mattress sink beside me. Open them, it demanded. The pressure on my chest increased. I could barely breathe. The darkness felt alive. My hand brushed something cold and wet. It smelled like decay. I couldn't endure anymore. I opened my eyes. Nothing was there. The room was empty. Moonlight spilled through the window. The note lay on the floor. My nightstand was bare. I let out a trembling laugh. It was over, I told myself, until I saw the mirror. A pale face stared back at me. Its eyes weren't mine. Blood trickled from its mouth. Its hand pressed against the glass. My reflection didn't move when I did. My stomach lurched. The figure inside smiled. Its teeth were jagged and gray. A crack split the mirror's surface. The sound made my skin crawl. A second crack appeared. The face began to push through. The glass warped like water. I backed away, heart pounding. My legs hit the bed frame. The thing's hand emerged. It grasped the air hungrily. I bolted for the door. The knob wouldn't turn. Behind me, the mirror shattered. Shards flew across the room. The pale figure stepped onto the floor. His body twitched unnaturally. It turned hollow eyes on me. "You can't leave," it crooned. My scream stuck in my throat. The window slammed shut. Darkness flooded the room. I felt it grab my wrist. Its grip was like ice. "I'm home," it whispered. I fought, but it was stronger. The world tilted around me. My vision dimmed to black. The last thing I heard was my own voice, calling for help from inside the mirror. And then, nothing.